Hey everybody, welcome back to part 4 of our God knows how many part review for the 35-week test. I'm not going to go over all the same stuff that I went through before, like saying that, hey, it's 50 regions, multiple choice questions, it's on Tuesday, or that it counts as double test grade, because you've heard that before, so I won't say all that again. Oops. Okay, so we have gotten up to the point where we are at Reconstruction. So if you can believe it, there were 3 plans for Reconstruction. Now, again, for this test, we're going very general. Why? Why can we go very general? Because it's multiple choice, okay? How do I know we can do that? Because I made the test, all right? So for us, we need to know Lincoln, he had lenient treatment for the South. Like, yeah, you know, there's all kinds of specifics, you know, in here, but honestly, lenient. I was about to say Lyndon Johnson. Andrew Johnson, same thing, lenient treatment for the South. Radical Republicans, opposite, they wanted harsh treatment. Were we talking regions? We would talk in a lot more detail. We're not talking regions, we're talking 35-week test, lenient, harsh. Alright, so we do get 3 amendments. I feel like everything's in threes right now. That are passed. They're called the Reconstruction Amendments. These amendments you have to memorize for the regions, for the test, for freedom. I don't know. For Narnia? I don't know. So let's talk about them. So again, it's this test. We're being very, very general. 13th Amendment, ended slavery. That's it. That's all you need to know. Ended slavery. 14th Amendment said, hey guys, you used to be slaves. Remember how that stunk? Well, guess what? Now you're not only not slaves, but now you're citizens. And between these 2 things, the ending slavery and the granting citizenship, it basically takes away the Dred Scott ruling. So, yay. And then you get the 15th Amendment, which says, hey, not only are you guys not slaves, and now you're citizens, but you also have the right to vote. As long as you're a dude, because still, chicks didn't have the right to vote until 1920. Oh, by the way, you have to be a dude that's 21. They didn't change the lower the voting age to 18 until the 1970s because of the Vietnam War. I know you didn't ask. I just wanted to tell you. Alright, now listen, just to go back for a second, listen, I know there's a whole bunch of stuff that ends up happening with this, like poll taxes and grandfather clauses and literacy tests. For here, today, we're not worrying about that, okay? Later we will worry. Alright, so we're moving on to the next time period, industrialization. We've got some interesting folk. We've got robber barons, and so basically, there's 2 points of view on these guys, and remember who we're talking about. We're talking about Carnegie, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, all these fun, fine folk. So yeah, there's a lot of people that say these guys, you know, climbed on the backs of other Americans to get their wealth, and they are bad, they are robbers, they are robber barons. There's other people that say, no, you know what these guys did, they helped, not only themselves, but the industries that they worked in, and they helped to make our nation great, and they're really captains of industry. This test, we're not debating it, we're just needing to know that the term robber baron is talking about these guys like Carnegie, Rockefeller, Morgan, and it's not a positive thing. Now, part of what these guys, the robber barons, the Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Morgans say is that they can do whatever they want because of this thing called laissez-faire. What is laissez-faire? The idea that the government shouldn't get involved, or very little involvement in the economy. Now, do we have a true laissez-faire economy today? Nope. Because if you're working and you're not, under the table working, like you're getting paid on the books, well, you're getting paid a minimum wage. When I worked at McDonald's when I was 15 in New Hampshire, I wasn't allowed to work in the grill because there are child labor laws, that limited even the amount of time that I could work. Guys, we are not a true laissez-faire anymore, but we were pretty darn close back then in the 1800s. So people are starting to get mad, and as they're calling these fine folks, I keep calling them fine folks, fine-ish folks, as people are saying to these fine-ish folks, guys, you're totally taking control and you are doing ruthless things, and that's not great. Laws are passed. And so in the late 1800s, we have the Sherman Antitrust Act that's passed, and in the early 19-teens, my favorite time period, the teens, we get the Clayton Antitrust Act. So what was the purpose of them? I like how I double punctuated. It's fun. The purpose is to break up monopolies, because every time you see trust, think monopoly. In social studies, like, otherwise, trust, think friend. All right, why did labor unions form in the 1800s? Well, again, we're going back to these guys, that they're feeling that they're taken advantage of. They want certain rights, like an 8-hour workday. They're willing to work longer if you pay them more, like overtime. They want child labor laws. They want safer working conditions, because dying on the job is no fun for anyone. And they want to have, like a minimum wage. So why, though, did these industrialists want open immigration? Open immigration is like, hey, dude, you want to come here? Come enjoy America. Why did they favor that? Because immigrants were willing to work for less. Because these immigrants are coming, they're so poor, things are so awful where they are, that they'll work for anything. They're just so happy to be in America. The problem is that the people that were here are saying, well, we can't afford to work for that. And it causes just a smidge of conflict. All right, what were 3 effects of the industrialization in the United States? You know what? Again, 3 is just too few for me. I like bigger numbers. So urbanization, which is the growth of cities, poor working conditions, like we were talking about, pollution. So those are some of the negative things, but you also get some cool things like nifty new inventions and, subways and skyscrapers and elevators. And you also get the growth of the middle class. You also get the progressive era. All right, what was the purpose of this era or movement, or era, if you want to say it that way, to fix those problems that were caused by the industrialization? What is a muckraker? Well, they're super fun folk that are hanging out during this time period, and they're exposing Americans, to what's going on. So obviously, the big famous one is Upton Sinclair, who wrote The Jungle, who talked about, things that are happening in the meat packing plants are really pretty gross. So Americans that did not work in the meat packing plants are now reading The Jungle and saying, ew, that's pretty gross. And so they want to fix that. Just like The Shame of the Cities, just like How the Other Half Lives, just like The Octopus, all those different books and novels are doing the same sort of thing, that those journalists are exposing those things so that the rest of Americans can know what's happening. What's the goal of women's rights leaders in the late 1800s to early 1900s? I really probably should have worded this question differently, because they have a bunch of goals. But the number one, the one that's the creme de la creme, the biggest goal is to have suffrage. And suffrage is the right to vote. I had some kid tell me one time that, like, oh, there's only women's suffrage. No, there's suffrage for anyone that gets the right to vote. So suffrage, right to vote. All right, let's talk real quick about imperialism, because that's also going on right around that same time as the Progressive era. So we have this fun little thing called the Spanish-American War. Well, one of the reasons we got into it is this thing called yellow journalism. It has nothing to do with the color. It's just kind of, well, they're kind of saying that, facts were colored, that they were not, maybe on the up and up. So yeah, these guys are printing, and this is like, Hearst and some of those other folks that are just printing crazy things, and people are like, oh my god, not the Cubans, and we have to go to war against Spain. And if you could believe it, we did. We went to the war against Spain. How did we illustrate our imperialism? And by the way, so when I say late 1800s, I'm talking 1898 with the Spanish-American War through the early 19-teens. I mentioned previously, I like to say teen. So the Spanish-American War, where we gained Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. We're annexing Hawaii. We're building the Panama Canal, and we have our open door policy in China. And I probably also could put on there Commodore Matthew Perry and his trip on over to Japan, saying, oh, by the way, you're going to trade with us too. So do you need to memorize, like, oh, the Spanish-American War, we gained Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines? For this test, no. But no, we should recognize these things as imperialism. All right, so our late 19 teens hodgepodge, and you know I love saying hodgepodge. So what's the purpose of the temperance movement? So when I was talking before about women and how they like the suffrage, there were other things that they were advocating for, and one of which was temperance. And so their thing is, we want to make it so people aren't drinking anymore. Alcohol, because they felt that it was damaging to families, it was damaging to societies, it was immoral, it's just bad news all over the place. So they have this movement, and it actually started in the early 1800s, so it's not something that just started, randomly. It's been going on for about 100 years at that point, in the 19 teens. I said 19 teens again. So they're super excited because as part of the progressive movement, they get the 18th Amendment passed, which prohibits the production and distribution of alcohol. So let's say you have a big tub of whiskey at your house, you can still drink it, but not in public. Just production and distribution. But sadly, things happen where in the 1920s we get increased crime, we get bootlegging, speakeasies, moonshine, a whole ton of just crazy stuff. And so as a result, the 21st Amendment gets passed, which repeals prohibition. Was the show that it's very difficult to regulate morality. So is it successful? Well, initially, yeah, they get what they want. They get that amendment. Is it overall successful? No. And what was President Wilson's 14 points? All right, so we've got World War I, known as the Great War. And so it's awful. We've got, beyond all of you guys that saw trench foot videos last year, you've got really, really a new type of violence that's being used. And so Wilson's like, we need to avoid all future wars. So he has 14 different items. Do we need to know them? No. But the biggest part of them was that we should create something called the League of Nations. So when we go to, and he helps and makes this Treaty of Versailles, which of course they do not include, because it's Britain and France and the United States that make the treaty. They choose not to include very many of his 14 ideas other than the the League of Nations. So he comes back, he says to America, let's ratify this thing. They're like, we don't want to join the League of Nations, and thus we do not ratify the Treaty of Versailles. All right, that was part 4, guys. Tune in next time.